Sabadi! My name is Adam Brass. I came to Luang Prabang as a backpacker in 2002 and fell in love with this place. So when I saw a position as National Parks Management Advisor with Australian Business Volunteers for 4 months in Luang Prabang and Kuang, I jumped at the opportunity.
Volunteering on this assignment seemed a perfect way to make a small contribution to potentially change life for the better for people who have been so kind to me in the past. Long-term locals almost always have the best grassroots knowledge and hands-on experience of their local environment, so the best way for me to help was to build capacity from my environmental management background and career experience so that locals can best deal with increasing pressures from encroaching globalisation by themselves. Situated at the confluence of the Nam Khan and Mekong rivers, Luang Prabang has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1995 and has won Wanderlust Travel magazine's World's Best City 7 times, including in 2015. With a population of around 50,000, which includes 12 distinct ethnic groups, Luang Prabang's Khmer people make up about 45%. Hmong mountain folk represent about 15%, and lowland Lao people who live mostly in the valleys and Luang Prabang itself comprise about 39%. I was lucky enough to be here in April during the Pi Mai Lao festival, which was a mixture of ancient traditions, colourful pageantry and lots of water. The Department of Information, Culture and Tourism office, where I spent about half my time, is right smack bang in the middle of the heritage city, where markets, handicrafts, cafes, faded Indo-Chinese villas and affordable delicious international cuisine are the norm. It's mostly flat, easy to get around on foot or by bike. Most of my work was focused on the Tat Kong Sea National Protected Area, which is situated about 30 kilometres south of Luang Prabang along the Mekong River. The park gets about 160,000 visitors from all over the world each year, and the numbers are growing by about 16% per year and set to skyrocket with the recent opening of daily flights and huge investments from the world's newest investor and super donor, China. The Free the Bears Sanctuary is Laos's only dedicated home for the protection of Asiatic black bears, rescued from illegal wildlife trade and poachers. It survives purely on donations from fundraising efforts. It aims to educate international visitors and locals with a community-based approach to conservation and welfare to promote a sense of affinity between local people and their natural heritage. The previous avid volunteer, Julie, did a great job of introducing me to the area and the staff, and one of my earliest tasks was to install interpretive signage for the bear sanctuary and the forest that she'd helped organise in her time here. You become respected and included and thereby contribute to the country that locals seem very proud of. I was also able to better understand local work practices. If I'd mentored purely from the office, any plans or programs would have been unrealistic and unachievable. It's also important to get as much research and information out in the open as soon as possible from relevant departments. For example, after 3 months of doing extensive research on track work in the park, I discovered a group of planners in Vientiane had already submitted a very professional, well-designed and mostly sound proposal. This was crucial to deal with the increasing visitor numbers, as it means we can reopen the other side of the river and waterfall when the old bridge is rebuilt, and when stable tracks are in place. I proposed a one-way system like in many Tasmanian national parks, which mean that the visitor's experience becomes a more serene one, as you're not passing tourists every few seconds, and numbers are much more traceable and therefore much safer for all. Also, it's clear that certain demographics congregate in certain areas of the park, so each area needs to be catered for and considered differently, including establishing disabled access to 2 of the swimming holes. All that I needed to do for the track work component of my assignment was then to add my proposed amendments to the Vientiane plan to improve the final proposal, as well as conduct a track maintenance workshop, which should prolong the life of existing tracks by about 10 years. It's useful to liaise with other volunteers past and present. It's crazy to reinvent the wheel for each assignment, even those from other agencies. There are already enough barriers of language, customs, culture and work practices to make volunteering tricky at best. Instead of doubling up on existing work, previous knowledge can be built upon and improved. My central task was to implement public place recycling at Tat Kuang Si. Before I arrived, I was daunted by this task and presumed it unachievable in the short term at least. But after observing detailed local practices, I found out that the hardest part was already done for me, and done very well by locals who rummage through the bins and find plastic and glass bottles and cans, clean and compact them and send them off to the recyclers when they have a good supply. After many dirty, smelly and hot waste audits at the landfill site, I discovered that over 50% of recyclables were still going to landfill and or being burnt.
So it's hot and stinky and full of flies in here, unfortunately, and most of it is landfill rubbish, but it still could be used for compost or something. But I've done an audit and more than 50% of the stuff is recyclables. Glass bottles worth quite a bit of money and plastic bottles worth a little bit less, and also cans. So polluted, bad for the environment, bad for the trees, bad for me, bad for the waste of land, and all this profit and treasure is going wasted, it's wasted. And so if we keep it in a separate recycling bin and it's found and it's unmingled from the other rubbish, people can make money from it, make a livelihood, and the village can be a lot wealthier.
The solution was in designing an efficient twin bin system with clearly marked recycling bins so that recyclers could more easily access the treasure, and an associated education package for visitors. This is now underway, and the next Australian business volunteer who is helping to build community-based tourism here is assisting to generate local income by getting the local village next to Tat Kuang Si, called Ban Tai Pen, to weave and produce the waste baskets on a perpetual basis. My project was focused on the poorest of the poor, who comb the streets for recyclables. These are usually women, many of whom are denied opportunities and access to health and education, which in turn weakens families, which in turn weakens society. By focusing on improving access to recyclables, it's anticipated that the benefits and increased income will trickle up and close the gap between the urban rich and the rural poor. In summary, I think everyone involved gained something from this assignment, and I think forging ties with countries such as Laos is a very valuable part of Australia's aid program and makes us good global citizens. Luang Prabang's precarious charms are always under threat but somehow survive. There are times of laid-backness here, but there are also times of conscientious can-do right here, right now, which is rare in Australia. It's just different, not better or worse. I learned as much or more as I taught here, and many of the lessons learnt were just from observing daily life. Khop chai lalai, Luang Prabang and Tat Kuang Si. I'll miss you. Whoa!